Emily froze, every nerve screaming to run. But Jason stepped forward. Hard. Enough, Nancy. His voice was sharp, commanding. Shut up. Nancy's eyebrows shot up. Oh, please. You're defending this? You've been kissing a liar, Jason. Everyone deserves to know who she really is. Jason's jaw clenched. He turned, putting himself between Emily and the crowd. She is who she says she is. She's Emily. And if anyone here thinks that gives them the right to mock her or treat her like trash, you'll answer to me. The room fell silent again, but this time, the hush was different. Heavy. Tears blurred Emily's vision. She had never expected Jason to defend her, not in front of everyone. Not like this. But Nancy wasn't finished. Oh, how noble, Nancy sneered. But let's be real. You can play her white knight all you want, Jason, but it doesn't change the truth. She lied to you. Lied to all of us. Emily's throat burned. Jason's defense gave her courage, but she knew if she stayed silent now, Nancy would own the narrative forever. So Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. She's right about one thing, she said. I wasn't honest from the start. My name was Tyler. But that doesn't mean I was pretending. Emily is real. She's me. And if that's something you can't accept, then fine. But I won't apologize for existing. The silence that followed was electric. Some faces looked shocked, others confused. A few even softened. But Nancy just stood there, glaring, her power slipping through her fingers. Jason looked at Emily with something fierce in his eyes, pride, maybe, or something deeper. He slipped his hand into hers without hesitation. And just like that, the room split. Some kids muttered and left. Others whispered to their friends, unsure of what to believe. But no one dared laugh, not with Jason standing firm at Emily's side. Nancy, though, wasn't done. Her smirk returned, colder this time. Fine. If you want to play house with your little project, Jason, go ahead. But don't think this is over. Everyone knows now. And trust me, she leaned close, her voice a venomous whisper. This town eats people like her alive. Then she turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving behind a shaken silence and a house full of stares. Emily trembled, but Jason squeezed her hand tighter. Don't listen to her, he murmured, his voice steady. You're not alone in this. Not anymore. Emily looked at him, her heart aching with fear and gratitude. She knew things would get harder from here. The whispers. The rumors. The fallout. But for the first time, she didn't feel completely powerless. Because Jason hadn't let go. The next morning, Emily almost didn't want to get out of bed. Her phone screen was already glowing with notifications, texts, missed calls, and posts she didn't dare open. She didn't need to. She already knew. Nancy's poison would be everywhere. Her reflection in the mirror looked fragile, like she might shatter with one wrong word. She fixed her makeup carefully, hands trembling, and told herself over and over, I am Emily. I'm not going to vanish because Nancy wants me to. But stepping into the school hallway was like stepping onto a stage she hadn't rehearsed for. Conversations hushed as she passed. Some kids whispered behind their hands, others stared openly. A few snickered. Is that her? Thought it was just a rumor. No way, seriously? Emily kept her head high, but every step was heavy. It felt like walking through quicksand. At her locker, someone had taped a note. Just 2 words, written in thick black marker. Fake girl. Her chest tightened. She crumpled the paper before anyone could see her hands shaking. Don't let them get to you. Emily looked up and saw Hannah, one of the quieter girls from math class, standing there with an awkward, earnest smile. I think you're brave, Hannah whispered quickly. Anne. I like your style. Don't listen to Nancy. She's just bitter no one looks at her the way they look at you. Emily's throat ached. Thanks, she murmured. It wasn't much, but it was something. A thread of kindness in the storm. And then Jason appeared. He walked right up to Emily, slung his arm around her shoulder, and kissed the top of her head, deliberately, right there in front of everyone. Gasps echoed down the hall. Phones lifted, recording. Jason didn't flinch. He glared around like daring anyone to laugh. Let them talk, he muttered to Emily. They'll get bored eventually. But Emily knew Nancy wouldn't let anyone forget. Sure enough, by lunchtime, Nancy struck again. On every table in the cafeteria lay printed screenshots, photos from Emily's middle school yearbook. Before. Her old name. Her old face. Smiling awkwardly in a collared shirt that looked nothing like who she was now. The cafeteria buzzed with cruel curiosity. Emily froze at the sight of her past staring back at her from every table. She wanted to disappear. Crawl under the floor and never come out. Jason crumpled one of the papers in his fist. She's obsessed. This is harassment. But Emily barely heard him. The walls felt like they were closing in. Her tray clattered onto the floor, food spilling everywhere, and she fled. She didn't stop until she was outside, where the cold air hit her lungs like knives. Tears blurred everything. I can't do this. I can't fight her. I'll never be enough. Then a hand landed gently on her shoulder. It wasn't Jason this time. It was Mrs. Carter, the drama teacher. I saw what happened, she said softly. Emily, you don't have to face this alone. You have people who believe in you. And we're not going to let Nancy tear you apart. Emily blinked through her tears, stunned. Mrs. Carter's eyes were steady, kind. For the first time since last night, Emily realized something important. Nancy might have started a war, but Emily wasn't fighting it without an army. That night, Emily sat on her bed surrounded by the scattered remnants of her day, her backpack half open, her phone buzzing with unread messages, and the crumpled yearbook photo that she couldn't seem to throw away. She stared at the younger version of herself. The face Nancy had paraded in front of everyone. The person she thought she had buried. At first, shame burned hot in her chest. But then something unexpected happened. She looked longer. And instead of disgust, she felt compassion. That kid in the photo had survived. That awkward smile was proof of someone who had endured confusion, silence, and loneliness, yet had still made it here, still found the courage to live as Emily. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't the same kind of tears as before. They don't get to use you against me, Emily whispered to the photo. Not anymore. Walking into school was no easier, but Emily carried herself differently. She wasn't hiding. Not today. Nancy was waiting, of course, smirking like a predator. Look, everyone, it's him again, pretending to be a girl. The word echoed in the hallway. Some laughed, others stared, phones out as always. But instead of fleeing, Emily stopped. She looked right at Nancy, her voice steady. My name is Emily. And if the best thing you can do with your time is print old photos and spread lies, then maybe you should look in the mirror and ask why you're so obsessed with me. A hush fell. No one expected her to answer back. Even Nancy blinked, thrown off for just a second. Jason grinned from across the hall. That's my girl, he muttered proudly. By lunchtime, things began to shift. Hannah sat beside Emily, loudly telling everyone she admired her courage. A couple of theater kids followed, sliding into the seats around Emily with quiet solidarity. It wasn't an army. But it was enough to break the illusion that Emily was alone. Nancy tried to laugh it off, tossing her hair and saying, "Enjoy your little pity club." But her glare betrayed her frustration. That afternoon, Mrs. Carter pulled Emily aside after class. You were incredible this morning, she said. But be careful. Nancy isn't going to stop. She'll escalate. Emily nodded. I know. But I'm done letting her control me. Mrs. Carter's eyes softened with pride. Then maybe it's time we give her a lesson in what real strength looks like. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the gym, Nancy whispered with two of her closest friends. If Emily wants to play brave, fine, she hissed. I'll make sure she regrets ever thinking she could step into my world. I've got something planned that no one will forget. Her smile was sharp, dangerous. And though Emily didn't know the details yet, she could feel it, like the tension before a storm. Nancy wasn't finished. But neither was Emily. The rumor spread through the halls like wildfire. There was going to be a special assembly that afternoon. Nobody knew what it was for, except Nancy. She had been whispering all morning to her friends, her eyes glittering with mischief. Every time Emily walked past, Nancy smirked just enough to make her stomach twist. Jason noticed. She's up to something, he muttered. Don't let her rattle you. But Emily's hands still trembled as she clutched her books. She could feel it, the storm Nancy had promised was finally here. The whole school gathered in the gym. Teachers sat along the sides, students chattered, and the principal stepped to the microphone to make some dull announcements. Emily sat with Hannah and a couple of theater kids, Jason on her other side like a shield. Everything seemed normal until Nancy's friend Madison stood up in the back and called out, "We have a slideshow we want to share." Before anyone could react, the big projector screen flickered to life. And Emily's blood ran cold. The screen filled with photos stolen from yearbooks, old social media accounts, anywhere Nancy could dig them up. Picture after picture of Emily before. The captions were brutal. Then versus now. From pretend to pathetic. Fake girl exposed. The crowd erupted. Some laughed, some gasped, a few even looked uncomfortable. The principal tried to shut it down, but Nancy was already standing proudly in the aisle, arms crossed, smiling like she owned the room. This, she announced loudly, is what happens when someone tries to lie their way into being popular. Don't be fooled. All eyes turned to Emily. Her heart pounded. Her throat ached. For a second, she thought she might actually faint. But before she could bolt, Jason stood. Wow, Nancy, he said loudly, voice dripping with sarcasm. You must have spent hours digging up old photos. That's dedication. Laughter rippled, but this time it wasn't against Emily. Then Hannah stood too. So what? That was Emily before she found the courage to be herself. All you've shown us is that she's braver than you'll ever be. More murmurs. Students were shifting now, uncomfortable with Nancy's cruelty. One of the theater kids shouted, "Get over yourself, Nancy. Nobody cares about your obsession." And to Emily's shock, even students she barely knew started nodding, murmuring agreement. Her legs felt like lead, but she forced herself to stand. Her voice shook at first, but she pushed through. Yes. That was me. I was scared, I was lost, and I didn't know who I was. But I do now. I'm Emily. And no slideshow, no rumor, and no cruel joke is going to change that. Silence. Then, applause. Scattered at first, but growing. Stronger. Louder. Nancy's smile faltered. She hadn't expected this. The principal stormed over, shutting off the projector and seizing Nancy's phone. My office. No. His voice left no room for argument. Gasps filled the gym. Nancy's face flushed crimson, but she had no choice, she had to follow. Emily sat back down, shaking, her friends pressing around her with pride and relief. Jason leaned close and whispered, "You just turned her biggest weapon into your victory." Emily's chest still heaved with nerves, but for the first time, she believed it. Nancy's trap had backfired. The whispers didn't stop after the assembly, they just changed direction. By Monday morning, Nancy wasn't the queen bee anymore. She really thought she could humiliate Emily and ended up embarrassing herself, one student snickered near the lockers. Did you see her face when the principal grabbed her phone? Priceless, another added. Nancy stormed down the hall, chin high, pretending she couldn't hear. But her clenched fists gave her away.